This is a recording of the John Cassaday Remembered Panel that took place at Baltimore Comic Con on September 22nd, 2024. John Cassaday, the highly acclaimed and beloved artist and co-creator of Planetary, and also well known for classic runs on Astonishing X-Men, Captain America, and others, passed away at the young age of 52 on September 10th. We gathered some of his friends to share in our grief and celebrate his memory. We hope this conversation brings peace to all those who watch it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for Baltimore Comic Con coming to this panel. My name is Bob Harrison, and I'm going to do my best to stay out of the way. This is not about me in any way, but I do want to get us started. You know, obviously we're here to remember the life of John Cassaday and to talk about what he meant to some of us and what he meant to this industry. I'm going to share my bit of John Cassaday in that I may have met him once. I may have asked him to sign something, but I never actually had a conversation with him. That doesn't mean he didn't affect me or my sensibilities. His art was continuously inspiring and as revolutionary as it could be. He drew my favorite comic of all time. From everything I've known, from the people who are my friends, who were his friends, he was a wonderful person, and these people are going to talk about his life and what he meant to them. When he passed, it was shocking to me, and I reached out to some of my friends when I was sitting in the audience, and I knew he knew him, and I told him the story that I had never met him. That John was this beautiful, amazing artist that I was just too enamored and afraid to, like, I don't want to screw anything up. Like, what does he have here for me? And my friend said that I should have talked to him because we probably would have got along. And that's the story that I hear from everyone else. The other quick story I want to share is another friend of mine had met him for the first time last year in New York. So he and John had come to go sit at a bar or at a table and asked if he could sit there. And that friend said, "Of course, you're John Cassaday, you can come sit here." And they talked and struck up a little bit of a friendship. And the next day, the friend brought his ash can of the book he's working on to John to show it to him, because that's what we do. And John looked at it and saw that that person had Mike Allred do a variant cover and said, "Well, why didn't you ask me to do it?" He's like, "We just met." And that was very much, from what I understand, it was about. I want to thank you all again, all here, for being here. I have prepared just a small memorial video that I'm going to run, and then I'm going to let you guys talk, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Scott, you worked with him first.
Do I need this thing?
Yeah,
Or is this okay?
that's fine. That's fine.
First time I met John, I don't remember exactly when I first met him, but he was doing a book. I was the editor-in-chief at Wildstorm a million years ago, and Jeff Marriott was doing a book called Desperados, and he had become aware of John's work and hired him to, he was an editor and a writer, he hired him to do Desperados. And, you know, I remember looking at the first issue and thinking, oh, this guy's pretty good. And then around issue 3, I remember going into Jeff's office because he was talking about doing a sequel to Desperados. I went into Jeff's office and I said, Jeff, I'm sorry, he's not doing the sequel. And Jeff was a little bit mad, but he got over it. I said, I was going to put him on something else. And that something else was the relaunch of Wildcats. I called up John. We were doing a new launch of Wildcats, and I called up John, and I said, you're brand new, but I want you to do Wildcats. And he was thrilled. He was over the moon. He was excited. He knew it was a great opportunity, and he was as happy as could be. And 2 days later, I was talking to my old boss, Jim Lee, and I told him that I hired John to do Wildcats. And Jim did something that he never did at any other time. He overruled that decision, and he said, we can't do that. Put Travis on it. And I'm like, Travis will do 2.5 issues. I think I was right, actually. And so I was in the bad position of having to call up John Cassaday and tell him that he would not be doing this book. I actually wrote a introduction for an art book on John from Dynamite. And the title of it was I Fired John Cassaday. So I called up John, and I gave him the bad news, and he was crushed. I mean, he was really crushed. And just by sheer fluke, either that day or the day before, I got a fax from Warren Ellis with a proposal, and that was Planetary. And I said to John during the same call where I fired him, I said, but you know what, John? I actually have something better for you. And I really think this book is perfect for you. And he was like, okay, send it to me. And so I faxed it to him, and I got a call back from him in half an hour. And he said, this is incredible. I have to do this book. I have to do this book. And so I hired him. And coincidentally, John actually had been communicating with Warren and had showed him his work. So they were actually talking about doing something as well. But that I didn't know anything about that. And so when I told Warren, he's like, oh, John Cassaday, sure, of course. And then he did Planetary, and he was absolutely perfect at it. It was 27 issues plus a preview story, a couple of crossovers. One of them was a Batman Planetary crossover. And, I did a lot of stuff with Warren Ellis, and Warren, I think, is a really good writer. But I think that Planetary is the best thing he ever wrote. And I think that part of that is because John inspired him so much. Anyway, and I just want to say that John and I became good friends, and we, anyway, he was a great guy. He was like movie star good looking. He'd walk into a bar and just women would gravitate towards him. And he was but he was the sweetest, nicest guy. And I feel bad because I used to tease him a little bit. He would always say something like, I just want to find the right girl. I just want to find the right girl. I'm like, yeah, sure, John. And but he did find the right girl finally. And that's it. I'll let other people talk.
I just wanted to actually Scott Dunbier, who was editor at Wildstorm, Albert Moy, who was John. You were John's art dealer,
And
right?
good friend.
And good friend. Yes, very good friend. Joe Rybandt here from Dynamite Entertainment. John did a lot of work for them, and Jimmy Aquino, very close friend of John's. And I'm Heidi MacDonald. I met John. I'm next. I think. I don't know what this. But anyway, I met John at DC Comics when I was working as an editor there, and he was drawing Planetary. And people. This doesn't exist anymore because comic book companies don't even have offices, but every editor had an office, and it was like, a grand tour. Like freelancers would just come and hang out in editors' offices. And that's really how you spent half your day, was like talking to people. So, John came by and I knew him from around, and we shared a lot because I was editing Transmetropolitan, which Warren was writing. And John was drawing Planetary. And, I think it's pretty incredible that Warren Ellis was writing these two books at the same time, because they're both pretty incredible. And he didn't make his deadlines. Is that right, Scott? Warren?
Oh, Warren? Oh, my God.
And
Warren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
always blame the artist.
Yeah. And with Planetary, the schedule became a very, very vague thing as the book went on. But with Transmet, it had to come out every month, and it was tremendous strain. Anyway, John and I bonded over that experience. And, like everybody mentions John's movie star looks, and I think he was in my office, and, we were talking about art and something. And I think I said, me and Trish Mulvihill, who's one of my best friends, and we knew each other also. We're going to the Guggenheim. We're going to go see this Brazilian art show. And he's like, oh, I'd like to go to that. And I was like, what is happening here? And, but we all went to the Guggenheim and had this amazing day of looking at art. And that's it. Like, we were good friends from then on. And, he was really generous with his time, and so generous with his kindness, and very loyal, very good friend. We were very good friends for a few years, and I eventually got fired from Vertigo Comics, and John was really there for me. He was really there for me, and a lot of people weren't. So that meant a lot to me. And, we stayed friends afterwards. And I want to talk about his work too, because just seeing so much of his work again has just reminded me of just how damn good he was. And, I do think Planetary was the perfect book for him. So Scott, thank you so much. You really made magic there. And that's the best thing that an editor can do, is make that magic where I think the mystery and the fantasy and the heroism and, the different genres that John wanted to tackle. And really great writing, obviously great characters. And of course he based Drummer on himself. So he put himself in the book, but yeah, it was perfect casting. And what a great book. What a great man.
It's funny because, I'm a big fan of Warren Ellis, but occasionally on some things, he has difficulty finding just the right ending. It's good, but Planetary was from beginning to end. But the ending was actually perfect. It was everything I was hoping for. Anyway, Jimmy, why don't you?
So I know John over 20 years, and we met in New York, obviously New York City. And I do the podcast Comic News Insider, and we started back in 2005. I met John way before that. And I remember meeting him through a mutual friend. We were going, it was her birthday party, and she got the invite dates wrong, so it ended up being just the three of us. And we hit it off right away because I've seen it. She's like, I know my friend Johnny gets about comics. So I'm like, that had to be around like Planetary issue 13, right before the break or something like that, right during the break. So we hit it off right away. He's like, yeah, shoot me an email. And I did. And we just started calling and hanging out. And me, him, and Paul, the bar scene in New York in the early 2000s, we were all over Hell's Kitchen and till, the wee hours all the time and just hanging, having a great time. And my first San Diego Comic Con was 2005, same year we started the podcast. He's like, oh, I'll introduce you to some of my friends. I'm like, oh, I'll introduce some people. And he's like, this is Jim Lee. I'm like, what? This is Darwin Cook. I'm like, what's happening? And I met Dean there as well. Asked me to get an interview with Moggs. Darwin, like, Jimmy's got this terrific podcast. I'm like, we're 3 months old, but thank you. And he was always like that. This is something you'll hear. And anyone you talk to know him is that he always wanted his friends to be friends with each other. And he went out of his way to introduce people to everyone else. And, I can't think of anyone I met through him that I don't like or haven't become friends with. Because he was so magnetic and charming. You wanted to be his friend. You saw him we talk about his good looks, of course. Everyone wanted to come up. Listen, back in the day, I had long hair and I looked a little thinner. I did all right, but we'd walk into a bar and some beautiful woman walk up. Hi, I'm like, his name's John. I know you're not here for this. I get it. But it was, I have so many stories, of us just like, some I can't tell, that around New York and at Comic Cons every year, that was my favorite thing, walking in the door, especially in San Diego. And I'd become friends with all these people, and through him. And like, oh, hey, Jim, what's going on? Where's John? I wasn't immediately with him. And I love that because that meant people associated me with him. And I didn't even care if they said I was a sidekick. I'll take it, because what a great guy to be a sidekick to. I was trying to think of some sort of lighter stories, but like when you're at San Diego, as we know, everyone would end up at the Hyatt bar, right? We're always there into the night outside. And I was smart enough to bring a flask every year, And each year we would go to the liquor store and get a little whiskey. I'd refill and he and I would just share it, and he would just grab my hand, whatever. Well, one year I forgot to tell him I didn't have whiskey in it. I had Amaro. Amaro is a digestive after dinner drink. It's very bitter, sometimes sweet, very dark colored. And so just instinctively, he just grabbed it out of my hand to take a shot of the whiskey and did a literal spit take onto me in my white tie and my white shirt. I have a great picture of that. And of course, it was just a reaction to me to do it. And it was like, of course, I was annoyed for a second, but then we just couldn't stop laughing about it. And we would always bring it up. If I ever had Amaro, he's like, don't give it to me. I'm like, don't worry, I've learned my lesson. But it was so funny. I had these great pictures of me just not covered, but like it was Amaro, and he was regretful and shame about it. But we just laughed so much about that. But I have a billion stories like that, and I think all of us probably do. But
didn't John famously, for a couple of those San Diegos, not even attend the convention? Like, he was just, I think maybe, he would have a signing for a panel or something. But he really was just out there to be out there.
With his friends in the community, we would call it John Con. He was like, we're here for John Con, guys. And we'd hang out at the Hyatt with everyone. And we would jokingly say that. And he would go because he loved the community so much. And he wanted to see his friends and hang out with them. But he's like, oh yeah, I might have one signing. Or like you said, there were some years he had none. He was just, I want to be around you guys and hang out. Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that the president and publisher of Dynamite was very good friends with John, very, very close. And it was in the early days of our publishing that a lot of those relationships that Nick had with people like John or Alex, Ross, we built projects around them. And actually sometimes got licenses just because they were going to be involved. And I was sitting here thinking about it. One was the Lone Ranger, which was actually born out of, I don't know what issue of Planetary, but born out of the William Leather issue of Planetary, which gave Nick the idea to get the Lone Ranger, to get John involved. And also, it's amazing. At one time, we were actually publishing 3 Green Hornet comics monthly. That shows you what the market was like back in whatever year that was. And John was doing covers in art direction on all 3 of them. So we were very fortunate to do a lot of things with John. Everything everyone says. I did not know him as well as a lot of these people, but I always whenever I would see him, whether I was in New York or the convention, we always spent time. He was everything everyone says about him is absolutely true. He was just a great guy, really great guy.
And this guy over here next to me, his name is Albert Moy. He's an art dealer who I've known since I was 18. He was much younger than me. He was 17. And, Albert, he is one of the premier art dealers, but he handled John's art for a long time, but they were also very close. So, Albert, I know you didn't really want to be here, but I'd like you to speak.
Yeah, Scott introduced me to John. Scott told me he had an artist that sorry.
It's okay.
It's okay. Okay, Albert.
Oh, you got me going. This is a testament to the kind of person that John was, because he was so incredibly kind and decent, and there were a lot of wonderful people in comics. There were a lot of jerks in comics. There were a lot of wonderful people, and John was definitely one of the best.
And not to mention his artistic talent. I mean, we're talking a lot about him as a person, but he was just, we touched on it. He was amazing artist. Dean, you want to?
Yeah, come say.
I don't remember how I met him. I don't remember the first time I met John, but I remember he was moving from Texas. What part of Texas?
He was Dallas Fort Worth area.
And he was moving to New York. Yeah. And I clearly met him because we were exchanging emails or calls or something. And he was like, I want to see Brooklyn. Show me Brooklyn. I don't exactly remember the year, but Heidi, you might remember this place. I had him come meet me at my house where I still live in Carroll Gardens. And a couple of my friends, named Mike Houston or Christian York, who we see back then. And I'm going to go to this art party called Rybandt.
Oh.
I knew that it could get weird, right? But I actually didn't know John's capacity for weird. It's not the guy coming from, with the movie star list and all this stuff. Super generous, like everybody said. So we go and we find some moving art parties. We had to get a call up. Rybandt is actually the phone number. It's like 718-RUBLAD. So they would tell the address. He thought that was cool, like, ooh, secret party night. And we got to Rybandt, and it was like a bunch of rooms where each room was like a different level of hell or something, but with art, or sex or something bizarre. Nothing I could control, right? But I knew, put it this way, I was kind of used to it, but I'm looking at this guy's eyes, who's this phenomenal artist, super nice guy and everything, and just watching him, and I became a prude all of a sudden, for him, and there's this one room we walked by, it was like this, what are those big chairs in a circle, from the 70s or something?
Papa San chairs?
Something like that, right? And there were 9 sensual Santas just tucked to sleep. He's walking by me, and I'm like, I don't know, when do they become awake and do something or whatever? And going into different rooms, and by the end of the night, we were half naked on a hotline. And then at the end, he's like, I was like, so that's Brooklyn. And when I was a kid growing up in the Upper West Side in Manhattan, I thought Brooklyn was akin to going to the country, because it was far off, right? And actually, it's in Brooklyn where I first heard silence, and it was loud, because I'm used to the white noise of that. But anyway, we got friendly, hung out once in a while, and I don't think we ever forgot that experience, And I think he assumed every time we hung out, we were like that. I was like, no, it's okay. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, speaking, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say real quick. So at one point, y'all know Chris Pitzer at House of Books, right? Yeah. So he was doing these anthologies called Project Something, right? And you were talking about how cool it would be to do something where, and I guess maybe it was inspired a little bit on like the Bizarro book where like alternative indie artists would do this mainstream characters, right? And vice versa. So we came up with this idea called Project Superior, and I was one of the editors, curators, and I asked John, like, not at the height, but he was John Cassaday now, you know, in comics. And I said, would you contribute something that's no money? Would you contribute a brand new idea to this anthology idea? And he did. He came up with a character called The Blank that was very cinematic because he loved movies. It was like a 4-page thing that he provided. I mean, Paul Pope, one of his, you know, best friends as well. And he was that kind of a guy. And you know, I do that too for other people. Or that's what we do as cartoonists. There's the pain stuff, or there's the stuff you do for them, and then there's the stuff you do for you know? And I remember how generous that was of him to add his name to this project, do this really cool little kind of story. And, you know, we would trade emails, and the thing that's weird about it is the treating with Heidi. Like, I see Heidi probably outside of New York more than I see her in New York. Same thing with John Cassaday or Paul Pope. And I remember it was a couple of Baltimore Comic Cons ago where we're at a bar at the, you know, in the hotel. And I think it was Paul Pope that introduced the idea of mini Picassos. You know what a mini Picasso is? Anybody? So me, John, and Paul would try to get free drinks by drawing like a bag.
Oh, Paul, yeah. Paul would do that all the time.
Yeah.
Picasso, like, you know, this was worth more than the drink or
Yeah.
You know?
If you guys don't know the story, Picasso used to go to restaurants and write a check, and then they wouldn't cash the check.
They wouldn't
because-
cash the check. Right. Same idea, right? So,
Yeah.
Picasso was a jerk.
the opposite of John.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, he was just a lovely person, you know, in the choir career, and I can't believe that he's gone. I cannot believe that right now. You know.
I mean,
Judy was there, and thanks Judy for giving me the heads up.
I just, you know, just the day, I don't know if it was the day after or the day of that John collapsed, but I was on a bus coming home from Maine. It was Labor Day, the Tuesday after Labor Day, and on the west side where he lived. And I knew...
Yeah, it was this month.
I know. It's only been a couple of weeks. It's really incredible. And I knew where he lived. I never went there, but I knew he lived in that part of town. And of course, I was like, oh, that's where John lives. And I mean, I saw him last, like at New York Comic Con at your birthday party. And I was hoping to see him here. But really had this really strong, like just emotion about seeing him and wanting to reconnect, because you move on, and that's what life is all about, of all these motions and these circles and everything. But I just had a really strong feeling about seeing him. And then Jimmy texted me the next day to say that he was in the hospital. But I mean, I just do want to say that if there's ever a time when you should set aside some issues and just reach out to the people you love.
And we keep hearing about the generosity of, I mean, he was obviously very generous with, just like constantly gift things to his friends, but just his time. And like, you have a billion fun stories, we all do, but he also would be there, like as Heidi said, if you needed that. I had a really dark time, really one night I was really, really, really down. Like many of us, I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I just said, I need to see you or talk. And he was like, meet me here in 10 minutes. And he was already there. And I spent the entire night crying into his arms. He didn't care. He wasn't embarrassed. We were in a public place at a bar. He just held me and listened and talked to me, and he saved me. And he was like that for everyone. And he was always there for you, always.
It's funny when you, at a lot of memorials, people talk about how wonderful somebody is, and, they are, but there's also the aspect, and it's when he did that really shitty thing, I don't have any stories like that. with
Same.
John.
I can say that to everybody.
I really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't say that about me.
Yeah, none of us. Yeah, none of us up here are gonna get that treatment at our memorials. Let me tell you. Yeah, but I do. I mean, the comics community has had some losses, and you know, my friend Elena Salcido, who worked for Top Cow, died also very young, and you know, I know her partner let me know, and I, you know, conveyed my thoughts to her, just, you know, that I loved her. And but I just do want to say, you know, like that story of Jimmy and John, you know, reaching out and, you know, being there for a friend, and this community, it is a community. Comics is a community. You know, we all here are, you know, working in the industry, but you know, coming here, seeing the people the attendees, and, you know, all being part of that community. So I just do want to say, you know, that's part of this legacy, I do think, is just to be that friend, you know. And like I said, don't delay. I know we say that all the time, but losing people this young, it's like, don't delay to say that thing that you want to tell somebody, you know. And you know, I did get to visit John and say goodbye. I know Jimmy was there. So anyway, I don't want to, we're all going to just start bawling in a minute. So, but I do, you know, please do that. And don't let petty shit stand in the way.
Yeah. I mean, like, we wouldn't text every day, but like, and just randomly that Monday when he had the heart attack, I just randomly decided to text him, and probably had texted him in a week or two, and just was a silly little text, sending some hot, spicy Jimmy love to you. Hope you're doing okay. And like an hour later, he's like, love you back. And then an hour later is when it happened. And it's somewhat comforting to know my last message to him was a message of love. So, but yeah, he was good like that. Even if he didn't talk all the time, if he saw you, he would sit down with you for hours to catch up and chat and beat about anything. And he was interested in so many great topics. And so many of my friends got to meet him that wanted to meet him through my parties. And you know, he's such a fan of pulp, and my friend Barry came from the UK. It was at my birthday party. I was so nervous to meet him, and John met him within seconds. They were talking like for an hour about pulp.
I mean, that,
yeah.
you know, that really, he really was so good with your friends. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, you could introduce him to your friends, and of course they're like, oh, here's my friend who looks like a movie star. But then they would just be talking, and everybody would be friends out. It really was a gift, you know. Yeah. I got a question for people up here. Aside from Planetary, what is one of your favorite John Cassaday comics? Or
I kind of like the X-Men he did with you know, I mean, the covers were outstanding, the stories were great. I also want to point out, unfortunately, there is somebody who isn't able to be here, and that's Laura Martin. Laura Martin was John's colorist forever. You know, she started coloring his stuff at Wildstorm, and then when she left Wildstorm, she continued to color his stuff, and it was a very rare exception for her not to color something by John, because John and her had a very good rapport. And what's really funny is, you know, if you look at some of John's originals, it used to be so funny when pages would come in, because, you know, this is back before digital, and so, you know, John would send in the pages, and I'd look at them, and there'd be like, you know, there'd be a character, like, you know, a little character here, and there's like a completely white page, nothing else around it. I'm like, oh, Laura's going to make this sing, you know? And she did, you know, and she really did. But, you know, John was one of those artists who could see the whole thing. You know, he could see all of the final aspects. He had a vision in his head, and he knew Laura could bring it together. So she couldn't be here. She was supposed to be here, but she got a little bit sick. She's doing better now. But she, again, you know, she really made John's work special.
Yeah, and he only wanted her to do his work. We were texting the past week, or the past couple of weeks, and then I put together a special, having his friends like call it and leave like or send a message, and her message was all about like just how amazing it was to work with him, as you were saying, you know, and how, you know, he was so good at direction, but it was comfortable to work with him. And I told her, yeah, he only wanted to work with you to color his work, and she was like, that really means a lot, you know. And it was just like he was loyal to his friends, you know, and people he worked with, and it shows, you know.
You wanted to do your best work with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what she said. Yeah.
There's something about his art. I'm talking about that. And X-Men, I think, I agree with Scott. There's something that he opened a page. The canvas was bigger with him. You felt like you were, you know, in a John Woo movie, flying in a helicopter through the pages in the landscape, and the strength that he portrayed in characters like that famous, you know, the X-Men that's over there, that walking through, like you can feel the power in that image.
The image of Kitty and Colossus, my God.
Oh, that's
Jesus.
We all know, right?
Christ.
That's Hall of Fame level stuff. But the other thing I wanted to say, if I could just interject, you know, kind of, Heidi, you and I were talking last week about this industry, and we lose people all the time, just like any other place. And sometimes their life's well lived. You know, we've lost some greats over the last year, but something like this, when this happens to somebody like John, who's my age, you want to take those minutes that you can to meet the people that you want to do. I was looking forward to him being here too, because I thought maybe I could get him on a panel and finally get a chance to meet him. And thank you guys for being here and sharing the stories you've been doing.
I mean, John was funny because, like, he didn't like doing panels, right?
He didn't like doing interviews.
He didn't like doing
his work to
the
speak for
public
itself.
face. Yeah. He liked to do it one-on-one. He would
Like early
hanging
on,
out,
he came on the
but-
podcast several times just to sort of like,
Yeah.
we were just starting out, and all his friend would support me. But after a while, I just knew he didn't want to. He let us, you know, find our own feed. He would, you know, I'd always bust his chops. I'm like, okay, every 100 episodes, come on, you know. He's like, it's fine, you don't need me on there. Yeah, he just was like, it's my work.
Yeah.
People don't want to hear me talk about it. They just want to look at it. I'm like, well, they do, but okay, no problem. But yeah.
Does anyone else have any thoughts about his work, or anybody want to share anything?
Do you want to say something?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so I've loved his work for a while, and I've never been able to catch up with him at any con. Finally caught up with him 5-6 years ago in Michigan, Novi, Michigan, I think it was. He was just at a table on the side, and I'm like, he's there. You know, I had my books, I knew he was coming. Finally got up to him, like, don't want to say what I don't say. I appreciate it, like, told him I loved his work. And I go, the one thing he always got me is every time I flipped the page was looking in the eyes. There's something about how you draw eyes that tells, I don't need to look at anything, just the eyes. And then you would go, no, the eyes are the window to the soul. That's why I start there. Then you go from there. And then we talked for a bit, which was nice. My only complaint was because he's so tall, my neck hurt. It's like, yeah, I just really got to get my head down. But yeah, the one and only interaction I've had, that was fantastic. Because I was hoping to get here, so the last 2 weeks, I'm like, which one did I bring? Which one? I'm picking out my books.
Yeah.
Because every now and then, like I do, just digging in the boxes, you find that one variant of his I've never had, I've never seen. I'm like, this is it. Nice. You know, you find something. But yeah, I'm glad you guys put this together. So thank you.
Thank you for hearing.
I have a question. He was working on something. Anybody know about that?
You want to talk about this, Scott?
A little, but yeah, not much.
I think you know about it.
Albert, you know?
He was working for something for humanoids. It's called Mad Shot. And
That was John's email name, by the way.
Yeah, J-Man Shadow, yeah.
yeah, I think it's like he did a lot of it. I think it's like 60-70%. Sorry, I haven't seen any of it. He wouldn't let me see it.
Yeah.
And it was very interactive or something, like multimedia?
Yes. So it was a multimedia thing. He would, again, I didn't see any parts of it, but he was very proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost done.
Wow.
So I hope humanoids, you know, would put something together and maybe put it out. I know he has several scripts that he's done, so hopefully an editor.
Is there an artist that you love that finished the work for you?
No.
There's probably a lot of artists that would
Yeah.
want to help him out.
Mitch, do you want to say anything? Yeah.
Well, I know my mom was, I don't know if many people know this, but my mother was, she's 86 and she was the president of the John Cassaday Panel. He was at my show, and I know you guys probably know better than me, but John was never punctual sometimes. And he was running late for his signing, and I do a show up in Connecticut. My mom's 85, she comes every year, so she's sitting there. And Cassday comes running down this hallway towards the room, and she goes, "Oh, what TV show is that?" He's handsome. And he stops dead in his tracks because he hears me go, I go, "Mom, that's not an actor. That's just an artist." He spun around. He comes up and goes, "Who's this young lady right here?" He goes, "Don't you correct her, boy." He's already late. He sits down and he starts talking to me. She goes, "Oh, you're such a good looking kid. You look like a young Rob Redford. Tell me more." And, she's like, "He shouldn't really be on TV." I go, Stop. Don't put him anymore. I go, "He's got to go sign. There's people waiting." He goes, "What's your name, Joan? You're the president of my family." All right. It's October.
That's great.
Happy birthday. And then I know where you see John Cassaday post. "Hi, Joe. You're my number one fan, John." And then he sent me a little note. "How's your mom doing? I'd see him in New York. I see him here." First words out of his mouth, "How's my girl?" I go, "My mother alone, please. She's 86 years old." But he was always very generous and always reminded me of that. I'm like, "Really?" So I tried to break the news to her a couple weeks ago. She was upset. She's like, "That beautiful young boy?" Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah, he was.
But the other fun thing is Dean here is taking John's place. Because if you've ever gone to the show, we do it at a casino resort, and there's a country bar there with a mechanical bull. So John would go to this when he'd come to the show, and he and I would sit there. It's a crazy place. There's people dressed like stormtroopers, cosplayers, and they're riding this mechanical bull. And I'm like, "That's your poster right there." You know? So people would get thrown off of it. So one day he gets a napkin, he gets a marker or pen, he starts writing numbers like we're at the Olympics. So every time somebody would fall off, he put like an 8-0 or something like that. So he wasn't there. And before all this happened, who shows up? I go, "Well, Cassaday's usually here, but he's not here this year." So now Dean is now anointed his replacement because he happened to find his way, and he's watching people get thrown off the mechanical bull. So started with Grubby Lad and went to a Grubby Lad.
Yep.
Sounds about
So
right.
he'll always be there. I was thinking about it. As long as you're there, John's there in spirit, watching drunken fools get on there. And I said, "John, why don't you get on that? You're from Texas." He goes, "I might be from Texas, but I'm not stupid."
He was really funny. Like, people don't realize how funny it was. It was very funny.
Yeah, you were just reminding something. I'm not going to say this panel. Sorry. That'll be for the memoir.
Yeah, he really wanted to be at the show. I mean, I was talking to him about getting together. I was supposed to pick him up, bring him to the show. But he really loves the show. He loves Baltimore. He really wanted to come in. So, yeah, he really wanted to be at the show. So, just happy with fans.
And I'm not trying to push any sales here, but if anybody wants to go and look at some beautiful art, Albert has a bunch of art. I mean, he was his rep for years, and so if you want to see some beautiful John Cassaday originals, you can go down and check out his booth.
I think I want to do that. I think it would be really nice to actually see his art in person and just connect that way. I want to go do that.
Yeah, he gifted me a beautiful page from X-Men years and years ago for my birthday, and I get to see it every day in my room. It's great. So yeah, I highly recommend that too.
Actually, kind of a silly story. Everyone talks about John's movie star looks. I mean, this guy he wasn't handsome, he was beautiful. And he was pretty. But through some weird twist of fate, there was a movie that starred a guy who looked very much like John, except he was not good looking. It was weird. And I would tease him and say, if you ever see the movie Scooby-Doo, the guy who plays Shaggy
Matthew Lillard,
looks like John, except he's not good looking. It's weird. It's very close, but it's like one of those little tiny.
It's like the
things.
Matt Damon, Jesse Plemons thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny. I would mention that one time. I go, whatever. And then the other day I saw there was a post from Mike Carlin on Facebook, and he mentioned that he used to tease John that he looked like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
Does anybody else have anything they want to contribute or say or ask?
So I don't know John very well. I frankly don't know him, but when I was starting to get back into comics, and I would go to Big Apple Con, and I didn't know John's work except he started doing Captain America, and that led me to read Planetary. But I saw him, and I go, oh my God, I had a little bit of hero worship. I looked at him, he looked at me, and I turned away and walked away. Okay,
that's sweet.
I'm not gonna. But Albert had him signing at Baltimore Con last year, I believe. Was 2 years ago? A couple years ago, okay. And I had purchased a cover, one of his Dynamite covers with Green Ordered and the Shadow, like called Heroes. And I saw he was going to be here, so I brought it to him, signed. And what I do remember is he was very kind and spent a few minutes talking. Very nice guy, despite him having a lot.
Yeah, he would do that a lot. He would just, it's so many stories he told me. He'd meet people or they come to me and tell us how they met him at a show and decided, and he took time to talk to them. He'd see them later maybe and chat with them up. He loved talking to, he just loved talking to people, loved people. He was always very generous and kind with his time, as we've said. But yeah, I'm glad you got to meet him and talk to him.
In 2006, I was flying from New Jersey to Singapore. It was the longest flight you could take. And I had first 12 issues of Astonishing X-Men. And I saved them up. I wanted to read them all at once. And I was reading them, and I put down. I saw this cover. His name was Aaron, because we got to be friends for a while. Because eventually he said, can I take a look at those? And we were reading them on the way to Singapore, and it was just those covers. That was just compelling. Probably like his third one, he's like, and then he just started to read them because of the covers. And that's how compelling those covers were.
Yeah. Captain America covers are beautiful too.
Oh my God, yeah.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for sharing. Thank you all for doing this. We put this together kind of at the last minute, and for you guys to be here, we just felt it was important. And, keep the ones you love close.
Thank you.